every one of us, we are all guilty of overestimating what we can do. And it's not just an engineer thing. It's you overestimate, I overestimate, we all overestimate.
I can't take no loss. I don't even know what it.
All right, we're back. Today, we're going to go through our top 10 ways we're using AI in our day-to-day and our businesses. Before we get into that, we are going to talk about our perspective on Gary Vee versus Sachs' points of view on starting a business or multiple businesses. Tell the audience, what did Gary Vee state? And I'll go on the Sachs approach or the Sachs perspective. David Sachs, for those who don't know, from the All In pod.
Yep. If you're on YouTube, you'll see this tweet pop up. But basically, over the last week, I was listening to All In last Friday when it comes out, and I was listening to My First Million this morning. David Sachs on Friday, he was talking about how, Google is missed the initial push with AI. So does that mean their company's going to fail? He says absolutely not, because they're so large they can afford to fail a little bit and still catch up. But he said for startups, there's no time to swing and miss and make a big failure. A lot of times if you try to do too many things and they don't work out, you just go out of business. And then this morning, listening to Gary Vee on the My First Million pod, he was saying that he says, I never have an interest in guessing if something's going to work. I have an interest in executing on anything that might work and then dealing with the ramifications. So when I heard that this morning, I was like, man, those two guys have had crazy success. And I feel like those two viewpoints could not be more opposed or different. Kind of like your background, you're the angel on the shoulder. I'm dressed like Johnny Cash and everything's dark today. So we of course have a little bit different spin on how we would interpret this. So why don't you talk about, from those two viewpoints, which part do you agree with, disagree with, based on your experience and what you've seen?
This will be very short for me. If it's startup and even if you have product market fit, all in one idea. So I'm definitely on the Sachs boat with this approach versus trying to have 4 to 5 hustles or side businesses or businesses that you're going to try to the ground and get a big win from. That's just me. It depends on what your ultimate goal is. But yeah, I would say if you are still chasing that first big win, go all in one. And I think the odds to get that win are going to be significantly higher than trying to your day or your cup of water analogy, which I think you've used in the past, of put a little bit of water in this idea, a little bit of water in this idea, a little bit of water in this idea. And that's just not my opinion either. I've seen this in SaaS Academy, where there's hundreds and hundreds of founders over the years. I was in there 5 years, and I'm in the boardroom program and coached other founders as well. And the ones that were trying to do 2 or 3 things at once were the ones that fell behind.
So let me try to straw man this a little bit. So from Gary Vee's perspective, Max is going to say, all right, I'm looking from an operational standpoint. You've got manpower assigned to this. There's going to be tons of expense associated with every effort. You've got dev effort, you've got human cost, all of that. Gary Vee, from a content perspective, I think he's looking at this and saying, you know what, there's lots of different platforms and ways to get attention. I mean, he said over and over again in that podcast that like audience was his currency. So he's going to look at that. Do what?
I said, yeah, of course. Audience
Right.
currency.
Right. So he's going to look at that and say, all right, if there's 10 different platforms that are exploding right now, I'm going to spend my time, which is a cost, but he's going to put time into 5 or 6 of those platforms, and he's going to see which one is going to carry his brand forward to the next phase. So from his perspective, I totally understand where he's coming from and saying, you know what, it's all about audience, it's all about views, and we're going to put time into TikTok, into Instagram, into Twitter. We're going to do our newsletters. We're going to try to crush YouTube. And he just sees the idea of casting a broad net and then slowly drawing that net in based on where you're going to get traction. So I definitely see where his line of work, that idea would produce great success versus saying, we're going to try to be the best at LinkedIn and only be great at LinkedIn. And then we're just going to ignore everything else where there's billions of other users.
Yeah, different strokes for different folks. Going back to the Sachs analogy and the growth stacking, it's the same thing with marketing. If you are trying to build your marketing engine, build your sales engine, and we experienced this at Elevar multiple times, and I would argue would probably still do to some extent, if you were trying to build a partnership program, run paid ads, run a webinar funnel, run a LinkedIn thought leadership funnel, do affiliates. If you're trying to do all of those things at once and you have not nailed one of them yet, chances are you are going to be very average or below average for all of them. And that's, if you look at Elevar's history, again, not that we're perfect because we're far from it, but we started organic. So organic that was the channel, and then added on partnerships on top of that. And then once those flywheels got going, then started looking at, okay, let's start dabbling into paid ads and content marketing. So I think it's not that you can't do multiple things at once. It's just, again, in the world of SaaS and building a business, don't try to start everything at the same time, prove some things out. But again, I think it's somewhat two different arguments. Gary Vee's, like you said, coming from the content side, you have to test a bunch of channels and throw some spaghetti against the wall, see what sticks. Where Sachs is a little bit more on the business idea. If you are a startup founder, don't try to start 5 things at once. Unless you're a Google and you have hundreds of thousands of employees and you can afford to fall behind a little bit, because
Right.
you can get that flywheel going very, very fast, very quickly if you need to.
Yeah. Yep. So his advice for startup founder, I definitely would heed that advice coming from Sachs. Another takeaway for this. So what you're saying is 7 years in, Elevar is doing a lot of things in a lot of different spaces. You've got events going on. You've got content on your site. You've got content on social media. You've got newsletters. You're being a thought leader and participating in other podcasts. So what you're saying is it's okay as time moves forward to have more plates spinning in the air. But when you're first starting out, get that one plate spinning, get it spinning fast, and make sure it's stable before you just start trying to bolt on all kinds of different other features and initiatives and areas of focus for your business.
Yeah, and we are a prisoner of our own spinning multiple plates. If we look at events, and you mentioned we're doing newsletters and these other things, if you actually look back at the last 8 to 12 weeks, we have been terrible at some of those things. We stopped sending newsletters. I would say, even just look at my Content Authority or our LinkedIn's page, Content Authority, that's fallen behind. And it's because there's so much more focus, unplanned focus or attention needed towards events, post-event, content production, repurposing, etc., where that just ends up stealing time. So now I think just being realistic, if I were to look at it, we're still trying to chop up these videos and get them out from the summit, which is about a month ago. We are still trying to figure out, okay, how do we get some of these other marketing engines going? So I think it is a trap that you can fall into no matter how big or small you are, because I mean, to me, audience is a currency, time is a currency. We have a limited number of time, and nobody, I know we put a lot of focus on engineers and looking at, hey, can you estimate how much time is this task going to take? 5 hours, and if they go 7 hours, it's like the world is ending. How did you miss that estimate? You said 5 hours and it took you 7. Every one of us, we are all guilty of overestimating what we can do, and it's not just an engineer thing. It's you overestimate, I overestimate, we all overestimate. So anyways, I think, yeah, to wrap up my thoughts on this, yeah, it is definitely a trap, no matter if you're a startup or if you're Google, and there are consequences to that.
Yeah, my final thought would be the quote you had from the previous episode. I put that up on my Instagram today. You were talking about, if you want advice, go to someone who's one step ahead of you, not 50 steps ahead of you. So you said, I'm not going to go and talk to Elon Musk about how to take Elevar from 10 million ARR to 20 to 30 to 50. I'm going to go and I'm going to find that founder that's just a little bit ahead of me, and I'm going to understand like what decisions and what challenges and hurdles they've just walked through. And that might be like a great thing to think about here is Gary Vee is one of the top 5 content producers in the world. And yes, he does have hundreds of employees, most likely. So maybe it is easier for him, and there's not as much financial risk when you're going to go and, jump into a lot of different fields and try to operate in like many different places. So great advice from you from the previous episode there. You want to get on to our main topic for today?
Yeah, let's do our top 10 ways we are using AI in our day-to-day. I'll kick things off. This one is I'm sure there'll be some giggles on this one, but instead of doom scrolling on Instagram and I'm laying in bed at night, instead of talking to my wife, I'm talking to Claude and ChatGPT. So wife is looking at Instagram. I'm sitting there. I do have the red light on. I do have the red light on for the phone, so I don't have the blue energy. Otherwise, Huberman will start knocking on my window saying, "Hey, Your sleep score is going to be 40 tonight." But yep. I will have a conversation, and I was laughing at myself last night laying in bed because I was thinking about this. Like, I'm just having a conversation. Whatever's on top of my mind, I just start conversing with, again, whether it's ChatGPT or Claude. So it's one thing that's top of mind now is I'm heading to London next week to speak at a conference. And so I have a deck and I'm having to create and prepare as part of this talk. And I'm just stop putting ideas, just ping ponging ideas back and forth. Hey, what do you think about this? Or can you pull some data points for this point I want to make? Are there any real life examples for this case study or whatever, like the story that I'm trying to pull together? And I'll get feedback from it. We like blood work or health work or health tests, whatever it might be. I'll upload those and ask for feedback. I think we talked about real estate on a previous episode where, looking at houses and look at market conditions and just, I don't know, travel, health, shopping tips. I haven't bought a rain jacket in literally 15 years. So I was like, who makes rain jackets? I'll ask for shopping tips. So that's my number one is I use it as my friend as I'm laying in bed and having a conversation with myself.
Now, is GPT replacing your journaling time? Is that what this is doing, or do you have a separate exercise for journaling to try to shut down your day?
But the 5 minute journal, which is over here on my desk, that's a morning thing for me. Yeah, I don't typically journal or read at night.
All right, so for me, I'm using GPT mostly, or not mostly, but frequently right now for custom GPTs. So if you're in ChatGPT, and I'm
Is
sure
this your
with
number one?
others,
This is your
this
number
is my
one?
number one.
Okay.
Yes, sir. So you have the ability to create these custom GPTs where basically you can pre-program personalities and kind of dispositions for the AI, and they can be different from chat to chat. So I've got one that's, a Hyrox programming trainer. So that's going to help me with fitness and advising me on like my volume. And I'm basing that off of a few people in the fitness industry I respect most and like their training methodologies. So it's going to give me advice based on this background programming I put into the personality. It's not just going to tell me like, oh yeah, doing curls is great. I don't care about curls. I want to be able to like push a sled hard and like make my running better. And then I built this advisory board, which I don't know if I've talked to you about this, but I really like reading nonfiction, and I've gotten into a place where I'm starting to be interested more in like biographies because like I read the Henry Ford biography, John D. Rockefeller, the letters to his son, which I thought that was cool. That was like a private glimpse into his life. So anyway, I've got uh, Peter Thiel, David Sachs, Grant Cardone, like 5 or 6 people that I really respect. And I said, okay, make sure when I'm programming this, you respond to me and confirm that like you are that person. So every time I have a question about making a certain business move, like these people are, they always disagree or they have conflicting views, but they're all very successful in their fields. So I'm like, okay, respond to me from the 8 different people. If I want to like buy a house or buy an investment property, how would each of these people, look at that and that use of time and money as like the best and highest use of my resources? So these custom GPTs are super helpful as, if you got the app on your phone, I'm using that also like way better than Siri because Siri does not translate Southern dialect and definitely Appalachian dialect very well. The translation and ability to understand speech from like our area of the world is much better with GPT. So that's definitely my number one most frequent use.
What losers we are, by the way. We just shared our number one each. You have an advisory board to have conversations with. And I'm laying in bed instead of talking to my wife. I'm also, just talking, man, how many cats is that in your background that you have there, Nate? Is there 7 cats?
We do have strays that we've started feeding now, so yes.
All right. My number 2, I alluded to this in my first one, but very much health data and asking for interpretation. And so this actually came up with my wife this week where she's getting annual blood work and a whole bunch of stuff as she's about to turn 40. She's probably going to have the same midlife crisis I had a couple years ago when I thought I was going to die and all these other things and got the whole body MRI. But she got these results and she had a few signals come back and it was like the full blood test for everything. And she was very nervous. Like she was just freaked out, like wondering what was going on. And we uploaded it. So we just cherry picked like some of the high, low ones, or you could just export the PDF and attach it to ChatGPT and ask for interpretation. But what we got out of it was essentially like, hey, these things here's why these biomarkers correlate, why one's way up and the other one's way up and these are down, these are normal, not normal. And it ultimately came down to, did you work out really hard in the last couple of days? Because this is signaling like a major muscle tear. And we did. We had essentially a Hyrox simulation in our shredding Reading this past weekend where it was an hour and a half, very intense, high intense workout. And I remember a couple of years ago when after our first Hyrox, I had a appointment that Monday. So the event was on Saturday, had an event that Monday. And one of my liver biomarkers was super high on Monday. And my doctor, he knew he knew I did this event. He's like, we need to get it retested, but more than likely it's from your muscle tears. And when you tear muscle, it releases this whatever this thing is, like this biomarker into your bloodstream. So, anyways, it's pretty interesting. But so I'll wrap this one up. Anything related to health, whether it's how I'm feeling, whether it's a test I got, or how I'm performing in different fitness activities, I just upload it, have a conversation, and now that it does live lookups to the web as well, where it can give references and link out to it, it's very helpful. Or you can use Perplexity, which will show you everything, and it searches YouTube, and it can act as Claude or ChatGPT or some of the other LLMs.
Yep, with nutritional programming, I want to get 1 gram of protein per pound body weight, and it was really simple. Instead of having to search around and say, okay, how much protein is in chicken? How much is in
Yeah.
steak? How much is in ground beef? How much is in eggs? I just told them, like, my goal is to get 180 grams of protein a day. What's the most efficient way to do that? And that, I mean, 3 seconds response, and I was on my way.
Three muscle milk protein shakes, 60 grams of protein each.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, so my second is I have recurring AI blocks, which are basically like these custom GPTs. I have a assistant GPT that I meet with on Monday morning. I really try to adhere to time boxing. So I want to say, like, okay, what are my big rocks in the river for this week? And basically I want this time block to facilitate these behaviors that I want for myself. So I'm just going to use these AI blocks to say, okay, prompt me with 3 or 4 questions to help me focus my week around the things that are most important to me. And lo and behold, I wasn't even thinking on 3 or 4 levels. I'd said, adhere to the best practices of executive assistants, and it's going to prompt me with 3 or 4 of those things. Then I have another block
Can you
that's
give
my
some
CFO
examples?
meeting.
Could you give some examples of the prompt and the response? I
Yeah,
guess you just gave the
so
prompt. So what are some of the responses that you'll get back?
I would have to look up the total call what it said every time, but it basically said, like, okay, what is your goals for this quarter? So what are you wanting to accomplish this quarter? And it helped me kind of work back to saying, okay, based on the goal that you stated for this quarter, what are you trying to do this week to accomplish that goal? And it also said, make sure you're removing any other task and focuses that's, not going to work you towards your stated goals, your priorities.
Mm.
And some of these things, again, executive assistant may sometimes come to you like a great idea and something that's life-changing. Other times, they're just going to help you focus on the things that you've already said are your priorities.
Mm-hmm.
So the responses it had, it just immediately pulled me back in and said, okay, like, I can't do all of these things every week. Let's focus on the things that you can accomplish. Let's try to eliminate the things that are unnecessary. And it also helped me focus on my priority of, like, carving out time for exercise and family. And I told the GPT when I was programming it, I said, hey, I don't want to have more than 20 hours of work planned per week, because if you plan for 20 hours of work, you're going to end up doing 35, 40 hours, whatever it is.
Uh-huh.
So that really helped me pull back and say, okay, like with these hotels and the construction projects, if I have 8 hours of that planned per week, or 8 hours per day planned, that's going to get me way over time to, like, have time left for family and myself. So again, the CFO, I have a block for that on Thursdays where I try to upload as many spreadsheets from my business as possible. And that helps me go through. I'm going to get into that a little bit, but that definitely helps me focus on the financial performance. And then my other GPT for my advisory board, I'm uploading my legal documents and contracts. And I mean, it helped me work through, like, bringing on a new employee last week and, like, the different performance bonuses. So
Yeah.
that definitely is, like, helping my week. And I just try to focus those on, like, 2 different days, not every single day. I'm not meeting with AI.
Yeah. Nice. All right. My next one is a little bit more into the world of SaaS. So this is a sales call reviewer. So Gong is a popular tool where you're recording sales calls and you go in and your managers, whatnot, can review them, give you feedback notes. So this is actually a process we're doing where we're pulling out the transcriptions from the call through the Gong API, essentially volleying it over to Claude through the Claude API. And the response is an automated PDF that goes through every call for every salesperson for the day and scores. It goes through and scores and gives feedback on what that person did well or what that person did not do too well, or where there were opportunities to improve. And it's based on a very custom GPT, like you mentioned, but it's, yeah, you are wrapping the prompt in what makes a good call, what makes a bad call, or how did you handle objections, how did you handle the close, etc. And that's just automated, so it's producing a summary for a sales manager every day for every salesperson. So that is one where I see that world continuing to expand across multiple departments. But anyways, that's my number three, I believe.
Are you able to program any like targets or points of emphasis when it's grading and providing call feedback?
You can essentially do anything you want.
Man, that's
So
incredible.
there was I won't go off on a tangent, but let's say you wanted to just program or just focus in on objection handling. So then you also have a custom GPT that will you as a if it's just you and your phone on the GPT app is that the app will talk back to you. So it'll act like a prospect. And you can just go through picture like practicing free throws if you're a basketball player or hockey practice, whatever it might be, and you're just sitting there practicing with that GPT, and it could just be focused on objection handling, where you're simulating calls, so it's actually voice calls, and you talk back to it, you listen, wait for the response, and you talk back, and then it ends, and it'll go through like, hey Nate, like you scored an 8 out of 10. Here are some areas that you could have handled a little bit better. XYZ. It talks to you.
Man, that's awesome. So my next one is I'm in the physical world a lot, so job sites, construction, and all. The app, the new 4.0 app, is really helping me bring the physical world into the digital world. So I took a picture of some handwritten notes over the weekend, and I just uploaded it. And I was like, "Hey, can you just convert these notes into written text in outline form?" And it did it flawlessly in 1 second. And that saved me like I have so many measurements from the different bathroom vanities for all the different guest rooms at the hotel,
Yeah.
and I was trying to measure the rough opening, and that's so hard. You cannot carry your laptop around. So, for anyone listening, if you're in the physical world, you don't want to carry your laptop around. It's difficult. It's clumsy. If you drop it, then you're in a huge mess. So it was really nice for the first time to like go and be able to just jot that down on my notepad, take a picture, and then it immediately converts to text that I can use and put in my spreadsheets. And then same thing with talking with the housekeeping team. I can just tell GPT now, like, hey, when you hear Spanish, convert that to English and say that back to me and translate, and vice versa. And those conversations are so much less clumsy because you can just like tell GPT, and apparently any language in the world, and you can have multiple languages within one conversation, and it'll just do that immediately. And you can just like prompt it to do that. You don't have to have like Google Translate where the app is only focused on translating.
Yeah. Have you tried taking a picture, like the door frame, take a picture and say, give me the dimensions of this?
I have not tested that. We use Matterport for that a lot. Matterport
Okay.
is just that physical measurement in space, and it is eerily accurate. So if
Yeah.
you are in that world, it's a free app and it's a really cheap device you can just hook up to your iPhone. That's a great little piece of AI as well.
Yeah. Nice. All right. My next one is I'll go into so you were talking about this with your custom GPTs and you don't have any real world friends. You just have what do you name your GPTs? Your finance GPT, your executive
Yeah,
assistant
yeah.
GPT.
I only talk to GPT and my kids. That's basically
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So I think giving context to whatever process you're going through. So it's give context on who you are, give context on what you're going to provide, give context on or instructions on how you want the GPT to act. So in your case, it was, hey, I want you to be a combination of Grant Cardone or Garrett Gunderson or whatever it might be, but whatever space that you're operating in terms of feedback is you give the AI instructions on who you want them to be, and then continue through that process of whatever you want them to execute. And then there's one that I started to do now, which is instead of just telling them what to do, I tell them what not to do. Like, don't give me something that a fifth grader could interpret, or don't give me something that I could do one Google search and find the top 3 results. So it's also like telling the GPT what not to do and make a checklist if you want. So I think that's where the more you interact with it, the more you use, you'll get better at this. But I think refining is also a skill, because that is, I would say in our lives with our family or friends, whatnot, that try it, they'll try it once, enter one prompt. It doesn't give them exactly what they expect back. And they're like, this is garbage. Like, this is never going to work. AI is a fallacy. So I think refining is a way where you can really, really push the envelope and just get hyper accurate feedback and efficient feedback like you shared.
Yeah, and another use I'm going to have this summer, as of last week when 4.0 or 4.0 was released, the ability for GPT to tutor our kids. So if you download it on your iPad and you've got the pencil, the demo they showed of the kid learning what the hypotenuse was and being able to actually trace that. And so like GPT would provide all the written diagrams and materials, and it would say like, show me the hypotenuse. They would come with their pen and trace that. And the GPT would say like, no, try again. It's actually the other leg of the triangle. And it went through the terminology in like a very progressive way of going like from very, very basic math and working all the way up. So for me, I don't know other parents if you notice this with your boys, Brad, but this is the second year that both of our kids have been in actual structured school. They're 4.5, 7 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I just noticed over the course of a summer, their brains just turn to oatmeal if all we're doing is like playing, watching Dude Perfect videos,
Yeah.
or just not training that muscle. So I'm going to try this summer to have GPT do some tutoring and progress them through some different levels of math and these other subjects like science and all that, and see how that goes.
Nice. We need to do a video share in that one.
Yeah, that would be cool.
All right. Why don't you do you have another one?
I've got one more, I guess two more. One is definitely a no-brainer. It's just the ideation assistant. So newsletters, headlines, social media shares, podcast topics, things of that nature. And for me, I don't know if this happens to you, Brad, but when I'm working in spreadsheets and I am in a managerial mindset, and then it's like, okay, I've got a block for an hour today to work on some content. Sometimes transitioning from data mind and analytical mind to creative, free-flowing, engaging content mind, it's so difficult. So that writer's block is like paralyzing. So a lot of times I'll go to GPT and just say, all right, give me 5 headlines, for our Spec House newsletter. Give me 5 headlines for a new construction in Blowing Rock, North Carolina. That's going to be less than X amount of characters, so it'll fit in like the Gmail headline area. So just getting those juices flowing and getting some recommendations and being able to say like, okay, do a browser search for the most commonly used words for real estate professionals that are sending out a newsletter to this type of persona. Because a lot of times when you're speaking to, real estate agents versus the general population, you're going to use way different terms and there's way different motivations. Yeah. So just kind of like popping that lid off of like, okay, here's, it's like almost a passive whiteboarding session. So I use that almost every single day to just help me come up with some like headlines, blog ideas, things of that nature.
Yep. My last one is, I'm pivoting. It was going to be around data, so data analysis, like deep data analysis, where it's using more of the APIs and more of the LLM APIs, which just gives you more access. I think you have 2 million keys that you can utilize. So it's taking mounds and mounds of data. So in our world, it's taking tons of behavior data or customer data or user data, and then running it through different mosaic segments or segmentation, or merging it, blending it with different data sets and trying to extract personas or things like that out of a customer data set. So that, I guess I kind of did that one. So that's a half a one, but I'm going to bring it back up to something more simple. Is what I've challenged some of my team members is just do a 30-day challenge. If someone's not using one of these tools on a day-to-day basis, just do a 30-day challenge and do it at least once a day. Use it once a day and just build that habit. And the reason for that is I feel like if we can, as a company, inject this muscle into our entire company, not just the 4 or 5 people that really love it and want to just tinker and toy around. If it can be something that we inject into their entire company, then it will help us meet one of our bigger themes for the year, which is becoming more efficient. Because really the biggest impact that I see all these tools, these LLMs having today is just efficiency. Just become faster at what you're doing. Yes, there's so much more you can do with robotics and that whole end of the spectrum, but at the end of the day, for most of us, it's just getting more efficient. So if you're thinking of something, what would be a good subject line for this, or what would be a good intro for this deck I'm doing, what would be good, instead of spending 5 or 10 minutes thinking about it, you just go ideate like you said. So 30-day challenge, that's what I've had some of my team members do to just build that muscle, and hopefully it sticks.
Yeah, presentation prep and review is a huge thing. The 4.0 features for that, like you can turn on the video part of it and it'll assess like your outfit, your voice inflection, your emotion. So that's new and I haven't tried that out, but that seems pretty wild. I've got one last one. Can I jump into that real quick?
Let's do it quick. Yeah.
All right. Pretty straightforward. Just another reminder, the spreadsheet analysis. I've got a scorecard for the hotels, and I loaded this in and said, take a look at this year over year. Tell me how I'm doing in the first, through the first 4.5 months of the year, and immediate assessment of historical data, and then unprompted recommendations for improvement. So from a marketing standpoint, where it's like cold outreach ideas, on-site guests, and how we can improve their experience there. So it was giving me way more than I asked for, and it was bringing me insights that I had not thought of yet to program within my spreadsheet. So definitely
I've noticed that.
Very cool feature.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. I'm getting more than what I'm asking for, which seems like it's new over the last couple of weeks. All right, we're wrapping up. What do we have to wrap up here?
We've got one Q&A question.
Okay, what is it?
And that's going to go to you. I want to hear your thoughts on it. What were the most significant factors that influenced your decision to sell your business in 2023?
I have a family, have 2 kids, have put all my chips on the table for 17 years, drained 2 401ks. As I think it was episode 1 mentioned, the savings account most of the time was $2,000 or $3,000, so living very risky. That was a point to de-risk some. But it wasn't burnout. It wasn't, I'm not sick of what I do or the market or anything like that. It was purely it's time to take some chips off the table. And the hope is that that'll reinvigorate and reduce some of the analysis paralysis of, I can't do this because I'm worried about X. And so far that has been true about 6 months in.
So if you pushed all the personal elements to the side and said, here are 4 or 5 elements of your business that would make it something that someone would want to acquire, what would some of those attributes be that someone could look at and say, okay, my business is doing this, maybe I am ready to start thinking about listing it?
Yeah, I would say rule of 60 at the minimum. There's that rule of 40, which is take your average or your annual percentage growth plus your percentage EBITDA. So if you grew 30% year over year and your EBITDA was 10%, so 30 plus 10 would be 40. To me, it's got to be at least 60 to 70%. So that would be 1. 2 is profitable, binary. So as long as you can prove that you can get profitable, that to me is a critical one. 3 is retention. So you can look at net revenue retention or gross revenue retention. Net revenue retention, that I would probably put a little bit over gross, because if your NRR is 105%, you could add 0 new customers and still grow 5% per year because you're at 105. So that's 3. Or I'll take one that's a little bit out of left field. I would say your employee satisfaction score or your employee retention rate. I think high turnover, especially in a young company, that can become very expensive. So not only are you losing your expertise in the company, but it's very expensive to replace. You are impacting culture. And all of that, I think, it's a hidden killer, not killer, but it's a hidden headwind to growth in a company.
All right. So you got growth, you've got net revenue retention, you've got profitability, you've got all of the indicators that you have a strong company culture. You're able to recruit and retain employees. Anything else that would be key? Maybe we got 4 there. You got a 5th one?
No, that's it.
All right. Why don't you wrap us up, Brad? What do we talk about? What can we take from this, and where are we headed next?
Yeah, so we take 1 or 2 of the AI items. So if you have not implemented, if you're not an active AI user, just pick 1 or 2 and just try them. Even if it's a 30-day challenge, just put it to use. And I think you will build that muscle and find it very valuable. And then the Sachs versus Gary Vee, I think that really depends on where you are in the business. So the whole analogy of look a couple of years ahead and take everything else with a grain of salt, I think that's a really critical point to make, because you really just it's all contextual. It depends on where you're at.
I can't take no loss. I don't even know what it costs.